Here's a phrase you've all heard, I bet. You are what you eat. You've all heard that, right? You are what you eat. I think we've largely, by way of science even, confirmed that that's true. What we take in affects our physical bodies. It's how our human form gets fed, this food that we eat. And so there's a lot of consternation about what to put in our bodies now that we have this awareness. And we in this culture in particular, where most of us are lucky to have an abundance of food to choose from, we're really in the business of trying to discern mentally, what should I be eating, what should I not be eating. There are a lot of messages saying, eat this, don't eat that, trends and kind of industry movements suggesting what we should be nourishing our bodies with. Those trends aren't always right, as we've learned over the years, and yet we're constantly grappling with this question: what is in this? We're reading the ingredients, right? And a lot of mental energy goes into this awareness of what is in our food today. Where we might be asking, is it organic? Was it locally grown? What are the nutrients in it? What's the nutrient content? How much sugar is in it? What's the sodium and such? So it turns out that for all of that confusion that we might drum up in the process, the beautiful thing about the body is that it will let you know if it's being nourished or not, won't it? So this most obviously would manifest in the case of if you aren't taking in enough food, you'd experience hunger, right? And people in this country do every day. Many of us are fortunate not to. And so for those of us who have access to food, then the messages that we get from our body might be, you're not eating enough of this particular nutrient, shows up in some sort of deficiency in the body, and so on. So there's great wisdom in the body, right? That it'll let us know, it'll show us the way where we think that we're trying to figure out something that the body doesn't already know. We're food consumers. That's what we are as animals. There's another way that we're all consumers, particularly in this day and age, and that's that we are media consumers, right? More so than ever, and we have this sort of cornucopia or buffet of options now before us in this digital era of information and news and stories. And we're accessing them all day, every day, right? So you've got a cell phone tucked away somewhere this evening, and you've probably got a television at home, several computers probably at home and at work. And maybe you still listen to the radio. If not, you perhaps take in some sort of audio information by way of a podcast, or during your commute you're listening to information over the radio. So I'm not sure though that we apply this same awareness or consternation that we do about where our food comes from and what it contains. I'm not sure that we apply that same level of awareness and care to the information that we take in and the stories that we consume. Now, it's, I think, important for us to consider doing so, reason being, while food nourishes our bodies and it's our connection to the earth, it's how we feed our human form, stories and information and news about our world, that's how we feed our connection to all these other bodies, right? That's how we come to understand our connection to the world around us. And it seems to me that's a rather important connection to make. And it's why you're all here this evening, right? Is that you're hoping to connect with your community and understand something more about this world that you live in. So I'm a media member myself. I'm a journalist and have been for about 15 years. So I'm actually going to give you a peek inside the kitchen, so to speak, with a story from very early in my career. My first internship was in the year 2000, and it was in the investigative news unit of the NBC affiliate in New York. So this internship was in a very glamorous location of what's known as 30 Rock. And my jobs were varied, but one of my duties was something called logging tape. Now, this was when the internet already existed, of course, in 2000, and the digital shift was happening, but it wasn't entirely pervasive, and most TV newsrooms were still operating with analog tape in many ways. And so logging tape was literally taking what we knew to be a tape, popping it into a deck, and then this tape generally was shot by a cameraman or camerawoman, and then And so the logging is basically a typing up of second by second. These are the contents of this tape. So it's kind of like a chronological, tick by tick, a play by play of what one would find in this tape. And then that helps the editors then do what was called cutting together, editing together, what you would know as like a 3-minute segment on the nightly news, which in a newsroom is referred to as a package. So basically, I was helping process this information so that it could get packaged and shipped over the airwaves through to you by way of your television. So one particular day, it was a very hot summer day, I remember, and it was just after one of the biggest parades in New York City, which is the Puerto Rican Day Parade. Millions of people turn out to experience this in some way. It's a great event celebrating heritage and history and culture and lots of good fun. This day in the newsroom, a tape came in off of the street. It was amateur video, so not shot by a professional cameraman. Just someone on the street brought this tape in because it somehow had something newsworthy, he or she thought. So my task was to log this amateur video. The contents of the tape were what you might have heard of actually in national news, and it became a global news story, was what was referred to as a wilding. It was basically a massive group sexual assault within this giant teeming crowd in New York City. A group of men in basically kind of a sexual and power frenzy assaulted dozens, actually, of women, not just one woman, but dozens. And this particular video contained raw footage of some of those incidents. So my job as a 19-year-old young woman was to pause, type up exactly what I see on the screen as I'm watching this tape, play, pause, type up the next for this play-by-play, which you can imagine was quite graphic, and it was a transformative experience for me as a budding member of the media. And here's why. The journalists and storytellers, by and large, in the media today have been trained with one particular objective, which is to be objective. And I think that there's great value in that, and I think there's great value in striving to set aside one's own biases in order to report the news. But I think that sometimes that gets confused with becoming detached from the meaning or the content or the context of the story. We live in this breaking news world and this 24/7 cycle where a lot of the economies of what fuel this industry that I'm part of and that you consume are based on getting there first. You break the news and you win somehow, some sort of contest, and then in the process the news, as I told you, is essentially packaged into these like 3-minute morsels, say for TV, being the medium I'm focusing on right now. So this was a transformative moment for me, being in journalism school, learning that idea of kind of detaching as a human being from stories, and then it's like, wow, pause, see this graphic image of a woman being assaulted in front of my eyes. This just happened, this is hours after the incident. Who knows where this woman is right now? And the world doesn't know this story yet. It's about to. And the transformative thing that happened for me is that I felt something. I felt it right here. You know, I got goosebumps, and my eyes filled up with tears, and yes, it was because of the tragedy of what was occurring before my eyes. But more so, or perhaps equally so, it was because there just something didn't feel right about what I was doing with that story. I was essentially reducing it to this many people. This is how many people I can count here, and this 3-minute package that people are going to receive this story via was going to be basically a reduction, reducing it to quick numbers and statistics and the exact location and who did what and where, and just this precise data. So, you know, by and large, the media catches a lot of flack, but just about every journalist I've ever known is doing the absolute best that she can to get the facts right. And it's not always an easy job. But I think that members of the news media actually do a really good job with the true part of true story, which is really the idea that I'm here to share tonight, which is that what's missing from much of the information that you consume every day on your cell phone, your computer, your television, your radio, it's not the true part that's missing, it's the story part, okay? One of the things that we've learned about food is that fast food tends to be less nourishing because it's been processed and packaged in such a way that it's been stripped of its nutrients, right? So we have this curious phenomenon in 21st century America where a whole bunch of people are eating all day long. There's no want for quantity. And yet, their bodies are malnourished in various ways. This is a very contemporary phenomenon, and the reason is that the food itself has been stripped of nutrients in the processing. And so the body is still hungry. You know, and if some of you might have pets, if you buy like the cheaper food, and they will become obese because they keep eating, trying to get the nutrients that they need. This is the body's wisdom. It knows what it needs, and it's going to do whatever it must to get it. So I think that this is an important lesson for us in our roles as media consumers, in our intake that is nourishing or feeding, our connection to the people around us and the events and places, our communion, our community, the information that is nourishing and feeding that is, by and large, being stripped away from context, from story. To experience, to understand one of the women's assault experience in that video would take a lot more than 3 minutes. And I know that we're all strapped for time, but there are journalists out there, and there are storytellers of many stripes who right now are in the business of doing in-depth storytelling, the kind of journalism that on your part as a consumer takes some slowing down, just like a wholesome meal that is whole with the nutrients that you need might take some awareness on your part and some planning and some time in the construction and the cooking. There is a journalistic parallel, and I would, I'd like to point out that those nourishing stories do exist. They might be in the form of long magazine stories or documentaries, things where, yes, you have the true and the fact, but you also have some context and the storytelling mechanisms that we have essentially come to know and understand one another through over centuries, eons of communicating with each other by way of story. So I would encourage you to bring that same level of awareness to the information and the stories and the media that you take in, and just as and you might ask yourself, well, how do I really know? How do I know if it's a true story? Okay, and I'll tell you. Just like your body has the wisdom to let you know if your food is whole, if your food is wholesome, if your food is nourishing, there is another part of you that will know when you find a true story. Something that's not just true, factual, but also a story, a true story with the context and the time that that particular topic deserves. And that part of you is your heart. When you find a true, when you read or watch or listen to a true story, you'll feel something, because the process of creating it was not one in which a detachment occurred, and you'll recognize that, and that's really all you need to know, is that you'll feel. And if you make a shift then with this awareness to maybe try to supplant some of the quantity, the constant intake that you have of headlines and data and statistics, and try to weave in some more, pause every day to take in a more long-form or in-depth story, true story, reported story about the world around you, an interesting thing will happen, I think, and it is that your understanding of the world will transform in such a way and take on a complexity and a nuance and a level of true connection, that what you'll feel ultimately is that your heart will be full. Thank you very much.